Hello, listeners, and welcome to the third season of the Syntinuum Podcast, the place where we do a deep dive into the continuum of synthesis and how to help the world solve its greatest problems. My name is Harish Murgason, and I'm a computer science engineering student here at The Ohio State University, and I major in computer science engineering and AI. Now, today I have the honor to be joined by Mr. Dhaval Patel. Mr. Patel is an esteemed member of the tech community with years and years of experience utilizing different products and the newest innovations. After graduating from the University of Georgia Tech with a bachelor's and master's of science in electrical engineering, Mr. Patel then went on to work as an electrical engineering intern at Apple and later full-time as a senior engineering manager up till May of 2018. Mr. Patel then went on to work at PillDrill as a VP of hardware in the healthcare technology space, and now Mr. Patel is the CEO and founder of Lotus Rings, a company producing smart rings to help assist with technology that kind of simplifies home controls all over the world. So thank you again, Mr. Patel, for joining us here today.
Happy to be here.
Totally. And for all the episodes I've done so far, the main question I love starting off with is what were some of the steps to get to where you are today? And essentially, what was the story to bring you to Lotus?
Yeah, it sort of was an accident, I guess is the short answer. I wasn't looking to start a company. It was sort of a personal pain point that became an idea, then it became a prototype, and then eventually a product, and now a company. So what you probably can't tell is I was born with twisted knees. Actually, me and my brother both. And over the years, I've been on and off crutches a lot. And one night, a couple years ago, actually in this house, in that room, I had just gotten into bed at the end of a long day, but forgot to turn off my ceiling lights. But I was too tired to climb out of my bed, hop onto my crutches, hop the 10 feet, turn off the light, hop back 10 feet, and get back into bed. So I said, screw it. And I just slept with the lights on the entire night and woke up in the morning thinking, well, if an electrical engineer like me working in Apple, having worked at a company that makes wall electronics, which is Lutron, I'm very familiar with wall electronics. If someone like me doesn't even have smart home in their own home, what about everyone else? And so I had the idea, but I was also convinced it was a stupid idea. I have a lot of imposter syndrome. So I was convinced it was not a great idea. Nobody's going to use it. Nobody needs it. So I didn't do anything about it. But thankfully, I did start having sort of these conversations with people with different kinds of disabilities. And gradually, after about 9 months of interviews, each interview being quite long, often 9 hours long, spread over 3 days, I was gradually able to come to the conclusion that, maybe this is not such a terrible idea after all, and maybe it could really help people beyond myself. And that's how it started.
Beautiful. And, going back to, I think you mentioning, 9-hour interviews, how does that happen? Like, how does, like, I can clearly see that, like, that process you put is so detailed and thorough that having those 9-hour interviews, allows for you to, I guess, get to the nitpicky details. But if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't originally planned that it would be 9 hours. What ended up happening, and so I'll give you an example of someone that is now a team member, our head of accessibility and our COO, Natalie. So I'd seen a post on LinkedIn by this person, Natalie, who was a complete stranger to me. And she was talking about something to do with sort of users that are blind and how they interact with the world around them. And so it was a complete cold message. I randomly over the internet, I messaged her on after seeing her post saying, "Hey, I have this idea." I didn't tell her anything about the idea because I wanted it to be as close to a single blind interview as possible. Blind in research terms, single blind versus double blind. And so I reached out to her saying, "Hey, would you be open to sharing how your day goes?" And the reason it ends up being 9 hours is I would interview them talking about their day and not talking about the idea. And the way I would do that is say, okay, you wake up in the morning. What do you do first? What is the pain point related to your disability? Why is it a pain point? How do you solve it? Okay, now you get out of bed. What do you do next? And literally I would follow every step of their day from when they woke up in the morning to when they went to sleep at night, and follow the entire arc of their day and all the different pain points they run into because of their specific disability. And gradually, and in Natalie's case, Natalie has something called Usher syndrome. She's legally blind and hard of hearing. And so, she had her very own unique perspective of what her day looks like. She's got 2 small kids. And all the challenges, like for instance, I never knew, and this might be interesting to some of the users listening here, I didn't know until I spoke to Natalie that folks that are blind don't actually use their cane, the guiding cane that you see with a lot of people. They don't actually use it inside their homes. They
Wow.
only use it outside their homes.
In unknown territories or
Yeah,
spaces?
just as soon as they
Yeah.
step out of the house, they use their walking cane.
Mm.
Inside the house, it just stays in a corner because
Wow.
the notion is that it's my home. I sort of kind of know where everything is. And so I don't need the cane inside the house, except oftentimes, her, as she then described, she would bump into things all the time. She would, with Usher syndrome, she has a very tiny field of view between your 2 eyes and your nose. That's all she can see. And so it's funny how her joke was, I trip on the way to the wall switch over a giant couch because I'll miss the couch and see the wall switch.
Yeah.
So on the way across the room, I'll sort of trip over. And so my lower limbs are filled with bruises. And, I have 2 small kids. They leave their toys lying around all the time. So my point being, to answer your question, that's why the interviews were so long. And gradually, that's how I realized where the pain points existed inside the home.
Mm.
And that,
Yeah,
that's a beautiful genesis of crafting an idea and then a product.
Mhm. That's a beautiful story, actually, and I mean, it kind of, playing off of that, obviously, we'll get back to Lotus as a company and all this good stuff, but, I mean, just playing off of the story itself, I wanted to ask you an interesting question because actually previously in a lot of our, past episodes, a common theme I've been starting to notice is that, a lot of the products directed to, people with disabilities or, disorders, a lot of these products stems from, the creators themselves having some issue or some, disability and having to work around that. In fact, one of our last episodes in season 2, was an AI app helped to assist against stutters. And obviously, Mr. Casterman's, it's a great episode. I'll link that down below. He was able to kind of tell me about how his story growing up was caused because of his disability. And I wanted to ask, I guess, since you're kind of an example of this, do you feel that the innovation process or the creativity process is much easier for those with disabilities or disorders as the problem is kind of just presented to them? And do you think it's easier for them to just find a solution based off the problem?
I'll rephrase that. I think it's much easier to start a startup with a problem you have. Not necessarily that people with disabilities have an easier time starting startups or not. Non-disabled people, neurotypical people versus neurodiverse people, anyone, really, it's easier to start a startup on a problem you have.
Hmm.
It's much harder to start a startup on a problem you think somebody else has. Because then you start making all these assumptions. Also, the assumptions change along the way. You make an assumption, you give a product to the person. What you thought might have been important to them might shift after they see your prototype. Sometimes it's not even top of mind. Like I said, in my first chat with Natalie, her point was, my problems, I don't have any problems inside my home. My problems begin once I leave my house because the rest of the world is not nearly that accessible. And gradually, sort of, I spoke to her for a couple hours, 3 hours on day 1. Then on day 2, when we resumed our conversation, she'd been reflecting on what her answers were on day 1 and then changed them. She said, I told you yesterday, most of my problems start when I leave my house. Except I ended up thinking about it yesterday, and the reality is I bump into my things in my house all the time.
Mhm.
And so I guess, as much as I think my problems begin when I leave the house, I do have problems inside the home, but I've just gotten used to them that I don't even think about them anymore. And so my point being, no, I don't think it's necessarily true that people with disabilities have an easier time starting startups or, founding companies. I think the more generic truth there is it's easier to start a company on a problem you have or you've experienced, or at least that's very close to you. Like maybe it's a close family member or a loved one or a spouse or a child or something like that.
Gotcha. Thank you for that explanation. It's a very interesting viewpoint. I don't think I would have thought about. So,
And I should make the proper citation. I'm not the I'm not the first person certainly to think about this. For anyone that's familiar with Y Combinator, the accelerator for startups, the founder, Paul Graham, he has a series of blog posts that I strongly recommend reading for anyone considering starting their own company. But that's actually one of his philosophies. And so I want to make the proper citation and give the proper credit, which that's kind of his philosophy. Don't try starting a company on a problem you think somebody else has. Start a company on a problem you've experienced yourself. Then you'll know exactly what is painful to you. What are the important parts of the problem that you want to solve? What would you pay to get solved? And so on.
gotcha. I think that's a very interesting point of view. I think that's also, I think will simplify the innovation process for a lot of viewers at home because I think generally what I've been seeing, especially as a student on OSU's campus, is a lot of students essentially take the approach you're kind of saying, right? When you're creating a startup and when you're making a company, let me try and make a product or a solution that caters to everyone. And a lot of those products I've seen over time has gotten so much more redundant, and the startup space itself has become fully reliable on sort of, basic solutions to wide problems that not everyone experiences. So I think this is a great piece of advice. I think just not only for me, but I think many other viewers at home will also be able to relate to.
I mean, I would
So
say
thank
in
you.
Silicon Valley, that happens a lot, right? You often end up being a solution looking for a problem. Like this happened when the internet happened. Everyone wanted to use the internet to do something, and people were using the internet to do all kinds of interesting things. But what was the problem being solved?
Mhm.
A lot of startups were, solutions looking for a problem. And of late, I would say that seems to be happening with AI being the newest sort of inflection point. It's a really cool piece of underlying foundational technology. You can do a lot with it. But I would say go the other direction first. Work on a problem you're truly experiencing or you've seen firsthand, and use your existing set of technologies to solve that problem, not the other way around.
Gotcha. So, I guess circling back to again Lotus, which is the company we're here to talk about today. I guess if you could tell the viewers at home just a little bit about Lotus as a company, what you guys embody, some of the main goals, features you guys have, and some of the products you guys offer on a day-to-day basis.
Essentially, Lotus is a wearable ring that controls objects at home by pointing. But unlike traditional smart home technology, unlike Alexa, there is no app, there's no rewiring needed, and no Wi-Fi.
Wow.
That's the sort of simplest way I can describe it. It's essentially a very, very simplified way of home control, and it's portable. You can take it with you to a hotel or when you're traveling, so you can make that space controllable as well.
How does so obviously the user would have to purchase a ring, of course. And then you mentioned there isn't any app or like software behind it. How do you make that environment controllable, or what is some of the technology behind that?
Yeah, yeah. So here, let me sort of explain this way. So let's go the other direction. Like if you wanted to make your space controllable or smart today, right? Let's say you wanted to control the light that's behind you or on your ceiling. What would you have to do today? And let's work our way back. So step one, whatever, for the same problem that I had, you would first have to rewire the wall switch that controls your ceiling light, right? If you wanted to make your ceiling light smart, you'd have to take out the old wall switch, the one that controls your ceiling light, and put in a new wall switch that is smart, right? That can connect to the internet to be able to talk to whatever you wanted to talk to, Alexa, Google, Siri, what have you. All right, so that's step one. You have to rewire your wall switch. There are other options as well. You can use a smart plug, but the idea is the same. You have to put in something that has connectivity to the internet. That's step one. Step two, then you have to put a smart speaker everywhere you did the rewiring. So you got to put a smart speaker in the kitchen, the living room, bedroom, bathroom, wherever else you want control. And that's assuming you're okay with the privacy trade-offs associated with that, right? Because it has to listen all the time. And then step 3, you have to set it all up. This is usually the step with the app. Pairing. This is kitchen light. This is living room light. This is light number, whatever, 23. And this is all best case if you, by the way, own your house. If you're renting a space, what do you do? If you're traveling, what do you do? Because even if you have an Alexa whole smart home set up, you can't take it with you to a hotel. So we wanted to eliminate each of those barriers to entry. So the way Lotus works, step 1, you put on the Ring. That eliminates the need to have a speaker in every room of the house. Because the Ring stays on you and goes with you wherever you go.
You travel
with it. Yeah, you travel with it.
Yeah.
And I mean travel with it truly, both inside the home and really travel with it. So the point being, one Ring means you don't need multiple smart speakers. It just stays on you and goes with you wherever you go. That's step 1. Step 2, for existing wall switches, right? I've made no change. You attach the second half of the Lotus system, which is what we call a switch cover. And it just goes on top of your existing wall switch without any rewiring using magnets. And the magnets mean there's no rewiring because the magnets are getting attracted to the screws that hold up your wall switch.
On the base plate.
On the base plate, yeah. And it doesn't matter what the faceplate is made of. It's just getting attracted to the screws itself. So no rewiring. It actually will work either which way. So there's no top or bottom. Now you can continue using the wall switch manually like you would anyway. So I can still push anywhere and use the wall switch like it would. Or step 3, I can use the Ring and point in that general direction and click the button.
Wow.
And using infrared, just like a TV remote, eliminates the need for any app or smartphone or Wi-Fi. So that's it. You put on the Ring, snap on the switch, point and click.
Wow. That's super cool, actually. And, having that, I think the extra element of the base plate attachment really makes it so, you can take this anywhere and everywhere and, makes it truly customizable, I'd say, right?
Yeah, we like to joke that it's low tech, high tech. There's a lot of high tech under the hood, but from a user perspective, it's sort of very, very simple. You just put on the Ring, snap on the switch, point and click. You can have an infinite number of devices because one Ring, there is no pairing, right? So one Ring can control any number of devices. So for instance, Harish, if you had Lotus and I came to meet you, my Ring would automatically work in your space. There's no setup. And if you came to visit me, same thing. So if the more important and relevant use case is if you were visiting your parents or grandparents, your device would automatically work there. And if they were visiting you, same thing. So the key benefit is it has network effects. It's like a telephone. The more people that have it, the more beneficial each person's device keeps becoming. Versus that's not true with smart homes today. If you had an Alexa and I purchased a new Alexa, there's no added benefit to you or to me because your Alexa only works in your home on your account. And my Alexa only works for me in my home with my account. Even if I brought my Alexa to your house, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Because everything is not paired to your devices and it's not in your account. That's the main thing that we were trying to break. We wanted to make it more universal, truly with network effects.
Wow, amazing. And, I find it really interesting that this is such a, like, even the way you describe it, things like Alexas, Google Homes, Apple even has its wide range of products, but really just taking a step back and disconnecting everything, and then using something as simple as like the idea of just using a TV remote, right? Point and click, and implementing that into this seems like such a unique way of thinking about it, which kind of, I guess, leads me on to another question as to, I guess, could you make the argument that sometimes a lot of companies and products are so easy and kind of jump to the process of overcomplicating a solution? And do you think that when they do overcomplicate the solution, it takes away from, other solutions that have a good amount of usability and could solve maybe even more of the problem than the high tech solution? But, it just seems more impressive. It's almost, in a sense, more marketable that the high-tech solution is able to do everything in a more complex manner.
I agree completely. In fact, I will give credit again to sort of my quote work alma mater. Apple sort of drills this in your head. If you ever work at Apple for an elongated period of time, I was blessed enough to start it as an intern and then work my way up to senior leadership. They drill this in your head. And the common mantra is it just works. You shouldn't have to explain it. There shouldn't be this long sort of let me teach you how this works process. It should just intuitively work to a human. You give this to a human and it should just work the way they think it works without you having to really explain it. And that's the key, right? Like everyone knows how to use a TV remote. At this point, we even have data on this. We've given this to users with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They're able to use it as well. We're able to give it to the neurodivergent population, and it's intuitive enough that they can just point and click. That's absolutely the idea. The corollary, the way I like to describe what you're describing, is a lot of products today, including smart homes today, are what I would like to describe a build-it-yourself Ferrari.
Mhm.
You know, it's amazing what you can do with it if you can build it yourself.
Yeah.
Which it turns out, most people don't have the time, money, or know-how to build it themselves. But if you do, then it's amazing, right? It's a Ferrari that you've built. But that's the complication. Most people are not looking for a build-it-yourself Ferrari. Most people just want a Toyota that comes pre-built that they can just get into and push a button and takes them from point A to point B. Now, granted, a Toyota is not a Ferrari, right? Doesn't have all the bells and whistles that a Ferrari does. But arguably, I would argue a not build it yourself plug and play car is more valuable than a Ferrari that you have to build yourself from scratch, right? A DIY Ferrari. And that's actually the state of smart homes today, which is like you have to piece all these pieces together. Very cool for a techie or engineers here in Silicon Valley, not typical for even my own parents.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, no disrespect to them. It's just not their kind of forte. And so that's, you know, if you ever played tech support for your parents or grandparents, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? With the whole,
Yeah.
what's my username, password? Oh, my internet provider's password changed. Now, you know, and now everything's disconnected. Now you have to pair it again or reconnect everything to Wi-Fi like that. That whole problem ecosystem. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, sometimes I think we, in an effort to add more and more features that we think we're improving the benefit of the product, we're not. We're detracting from it. And sometimes simplicity is the more valuable thing than more features. Not
Wow. I
always,
don't think,
but sometimes.
yeah, I don't think that could have been better said. And yeah, I totally agree. And there's, especially just the "it just works" statement, I think is just a perfect way to put things. And, obviously, I've had my fair share of the tech support moments as well for my family. Um, and, as a CS major, those moments will keep going on, sometimes amplify itself later down the line. But I couldn't agree more, and definitely simplifying it is a great way to put it.
And, you know, there are, don't get me wrong, there are times where the complex things are needed, and there's a time and place for that. But I think it's better if you were more intentional about where you are adding complexity rather than that being the de facto mode of operation all the time, which is how most products get built today. It's like, more features are better. Let's just keep adding more features. That's not always the case. Their simplicity actually is very valuable as well. So you want to be very mindful and selective about when and how you add complexity into your system. It's not more is not always better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Because especially, I know this is kind of a side tangent. We'll definitely get back to Lotus in a second. But kind of going off what you said, I read a lot of articles about how a lot of the market currently, especially I think specifically when it comes to buying cars, recently, car interiors itself have been getting more and more complicated over the years, and I'm sure viewers at home totally understand where this is coming from. But the use of the big LED screens, layering all the buttons between different panels, and having this whole software layout. I mean, obviously very popular. with Tesla interiors. But a large study was done kind of on a lot of the users and the people who use these interfaces. And they actually started to see that they preferred more analog buttons over digital buttons. And I think that is, I remember reading the study and I'm just able to kind of connect it to what you're saying now, right? Like, although that screen is super cool and it adds like a whole software layer that, adds a lot of usability, the analog buttons just give a lot more satisfaction. They're much cleaner to look at. And apparently, like a lot of the users have been saying, they're much simpler to use, they're more cleaner to use, and they're just like a more simpler way of doing it all. So I think that's kind of just another layer I thought I'd add on onto your story as well. But going back to Lotus rings, apologies for the tangent. But I know you mentioned kind of it's just a simple push and click and you have the wall attachment. What are some of the other product types, or is there any customization to the rings? Or, what are some of the other components that come at Lotus?
So the nice thing is, and this was core to the architecture, because it is going on top of your existing wall switch, you can control anything, not just lights. We use lights as an intuitive example, common example, because people sort of get it quickly. But because it's going on top of your existing wall switch, you can control a ceiling fan. You can control appliances because it's winter sort of now. Very common example is fireplaces. Anything controlled by a wall switch. Our most recent interesting example was this lady, one of our users, is using it to control her old school gramophone, like the old LP players. It's on the floor. She doesn't want to lean over and fall. Also, it hurts. And so she's able to actually listen to music because that's controlled by a wall switch. So there's sort of a wide variety of things. The more important thing being it piggybacks on your existing wiring. So whatever your existing wiring at home or wherever you are, dorm, school, wherever that is, it will just do that. You're just able to control that remotely. On top of all that, it automatically, you don't need the second switch cover, it automatically can control TVs. Because the ring is using the same infrared that your TV remote uses. So with the TV remote, you just point and click. The ring is a substitute for your remote. You can just point the ring directly to the TV and control the TV. You don't need a switch cover. Now, I will say the caveat to all of everything I just said is at the moment, everything is on and off. Just two states, on and off. And there's a reason for this. Again, this is one of those less is more intentional choices. We had the option of changing the button to be more like a joystick and do, fancier things. We're planning on doing that down the road. But at the moment, the reason to do just on and off is non-disabled users can just do point and click if they have fine motor control, right? You can use your thumb to push on your index finger and just push the button. But if you don't have fine motor control, as a lot of users with disabilities will share, if you only can do gross motor control, a lot of our users will push one hand against their other hands and turn on the thing, push the button. Or wheelchair users will push against their knee to push the button, or even the wheelchair itself. And so that's the reason why we made everything just on and off, so users without fine motor control can still benefit.
Perfect. And I guess it's really just being considerate of all the different types and use cases and, allowing for a much more comfortable environment for all the users, right?
And in fact, it's something in the advocacy world, there's a term for it. It's called universal design, which is you think of everyone, not just the quote typical population, which in this case is the non-disabled population. You think of the quote corner case user first, and you solve for them first. And when you do that, you automatically solve for everybody else anyway, right? If your product is simple enough for a child to use, then anybody can use it. Or if it's light enough for grandparents or seniors or elderly to use, then anybody else can use it. Same thing with disability. If your product is capable of helping people with disabilities, then it's small enough, light enough, easy enough that everybody else can benefit as well. So that's the universal design element. We then combine that with the inclusive design. Universal design is one size fits all. So the underlying technology is the same, right? It's still infrared, no matter who you are, what you're using it for. But the inclusive design is one size fits one. And so to answer your question, we have multiple ring sizes. We have different colors. We have a rose gold, silver, and then a graphite gray. That way, users can, even with different finger sizes, can actually put it on. Even for in-between ring sizes, like if let's say you're in between a size 8 and a size 9, we actually provide foam inserts so you can make the rings more snug if you wanted it. That's the inclusive design element. So it's a combination of universal design and inclusive design.
Mhm. Wow, great way to put it. And yeah, it seems super exciting, getting to see different colors and um like different customizations, even the foam inserts. It'll definitely make it more customizable. And kind of going off of that, um, do you ever see any users using the Lotus ring just for, just to look nice, or do you see it as like a
Oh
fashion
yeah.
element? Yeah.
Well, all the time actually. And that's kind of nice. A lot of people see it as fun. The most common, this weird interesting thing has happened lately where I can tell what your fantasy or comic strip of choice is after I talk to you because of Lotus. And the reason for that is the analogy that people use sort of reflects the universe that they like. For instance, people will come to me and reference Lord of the Rings, or if they're a Harry Potter fan, they will sort of reference Wingardium Leviosa with the ring. Or if you're in Star Wars, you'll reference the Force. Or if you're a DC fan, then you'll sort of reference Green Lantern, right? Like there's all these different things. And it's funny, by talking to people, I can sort of quickly understand, oh, you're a Harry Potter fan. Oh, you're a Lord of the Rings fan, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. In fact, the most recent interesting conversation we had was with the Boston Children's Hospital. We've just started talking to them. So very early days. But one of the things they were explaining to us is this is good not just for older adults, but for kids.
Mhm.
A lot of kids with disabilities or severe chronic conditions, the only things that exist in the market for them are toys.
Mhm.
There's nothing that feels like a toy, but also actually functionally helps them in real life. Because they're children. All the products catered to them are toys. And so they love this because it actually helps them in real life. Everything from being afraid of the dark to bedwetting to night terrors to anything really, to not having to ask for help and feel more independent and feel more in control of their own lives, versus also being fun like a toy. And so it's a nice balance. And so we've just been starting to talk to them about that.
Wow, it's a super exciting collaboration, and actually kind of like connects to my next question, which was I was curious just in general. I know obviously the Boston's hospital is kind of a very specific demographic you guys are shooting for. But even based on whether it be the hardware or even just like the customization we were talking about, are there any future collaborations you guys are looking into? Maybe like, you mentioned like a DC, like maybe a Green Lantern collaboration. Or is there any um on kind of like a more technical side, is there any technologies, obviously things like AI and computer vision have been on the top of the market in popularity and sales. So is there any collaborations or changes you look to implement into Lotus, or, you look to kind of bring about in Lotus in general?
Yeah, of course. So, controlling wall switches was the first starting point because that's one of the most common things in your home. The most common thing in your home is actually outlets, and a close second are wall switches, because there's wall switches everywhere. On average, depending on the size of your home, you have somewhere around 60 or 70 wall switches and even more outlets. So we started with wall switches because by making just a single device, you can control anything: lights, fans, appliances, what have you.
Mhm.
The obvious next step, which we've been getting lots of requests from our existing customers and users, is can you start controlling things that are not controlled by wall switches as well? Can you control things that we plug directly into an outlet, like a floor lamp or a floor fan? And we can. We actually have early prototypes now that can do that.
Wow.
In addition, we've now begun a collaboration, to your point, with another company called Open Sesame to control doors, to open and close doors.
Wow.
And we'll already have working prototypes, but it'll be some time before the product is available in the market. But that's kind of what we're starting to do. The whole idea is, with your ring, no matter where you are and where you go, you can control the space around you without ever having been there before and without any setup.
Mhm.
It's literally, you fly to Tokyo, you show up, whatever you can see, you can control.
Mhm. Wow, that's awesome. And I know you mentioned kind of like a lot of some of the early prototypes and all that good stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about the R&D process and kind of how you guys get to, these collaborations and,
Mhm.
different prototypes?
Yeah, actually, this is the part that I can talk for hours. But
Mm.
this was the very first Lotus ring.
Oh, wow.
It's for those who are just listening, I am holding what looks like a very long piece of wire with the USB connector on one end and a piece of Velcro actually on the other. With the core basics that are in a ring now, it's a button, a single button, and an infrared transmitter, right?
Mhm.
But this was actually the first prototype, and we would give this to people. I remember I was really ashamed and embarrassed that I would go to people and give this to them. Because, if I ever met any of my former Apple colleagues, they would sort of look down upon me of like, what is this garbage looking thing?
Mm.
Because, it's pretty big and janky looking and, very ugly.
It's a
Uh,
prototype.
but it was a prototype and that was the goal, which is give them to users and let them tell you what is important to them and what is working and what's not. Don't make assumptions. You'll hear this term human-centered design thrown around a lot these days, or like person-centered design or human-centered design. Really, it's a fancy word for don't make assumptions. You're just not allowed to make assumptions. You can't assume what they will like. You can't assume what they will not like. You can't assume what they will use it for. People have used it for sort of all sorts of things that we didn't even think of, like the gramophone example. So just give your prototype to users, listen to what they have to say, iterate. When you make another version of the prototype, give it back to them, watch them use it, listen to what they say, iterate. And that's it. You keep doing that. So another example would be if this was the first switch cover we made,
Mhm.
3D printed, just has a USB cable sticking out. And, because there were no batteries inside back then, we would just plug it into like a battery pack.
Mhm.
And, kind of roughly architecturally all correct. There's an infrared receiver and, magnets in the back. And so all the basics are there. But you'll notice there are no buttons. And so I remember we gave this prototype and this weird looking ring to our first user. And I was very excited. There were only 3 Lotus users in the world because we only had 3 prototypes. We gave this to this older gentleman who sort of had limited mobility, uses a cane and a walker to get around. And, we're sitting on pins and needles. And the next morning we got a call from him, like with bated breath. I answer the phone, like, okay, what's he about to say? And he goes, well, I love it. And we're like, yes, that's awesome. But my wife hates it. Oh, crap.
Uh,
Okay. Not we were thinking either everyone's going to love it or everyone's going to hate it. What's this sort of dichotomy? And it turned out a very specific piece of feedback, which was I've put this switch cover thing on my kitchen switch because I use that light a lot. But now you've covered up that wall switch, so nobody else in the house can use it, right? Because you put this on top of the wall switch.
oh, yeah.
Now my wife and my daughter, nobody else can like go use the kitchen wall switch because you've covered it up.
Mhm.
Only the person with the ring can interact with it. Can you add some buttons or something so other people in the house can also interact with that same wall switch? We're like, oh my God, totally valid point. We had not thought about it at all. So I'm like, all right, let's get to work. So very, very quickly, these are all 3D printed prototypes, by the way. So very, very quickly, you can see this is iteration number 2. We made it a little bit smaller and we added these 2 buttons on it, right? It works very simply. You just, you push on and off, whatever you want.
Mhm.
And we give it back to him and we're like, okay, what's he going to say? And, he liked it. And the next day he called us back saying, okay, this is definitely better. But those buttons are really small and everything's black. So it's hard to find this in the dark. Like, can you make those buttons bigger or something? And so gradually over time, these 2 tiny buttons converted into the entire front surface became a button. And also you'll notice the color has changed. We thought people would want to match the color of their wall switch to the color of the ring. Turns out nobody cares.
Mhm.
People want their wall switch to match the wall plate that they
Mhm.
have in their homes. So it turns out all of the wall switches we needed are all white because everyone mostly has white colored wall plates.
Yeah,
Only the
most
ring
common.
colors is what they cared about looking different. And that was it. And so our early prototypes were like all multicolored, and then we stopped all that. Only yours have colors now. So my point being, that's sort of an example of the R&D process. Don't jump to miniaturization. Jump to the first big step of improvement, whatever that is, and not even big. First small step of improvement that is vastly different than what exists today. Give it to users. They'll quickly tell you what is important and not important, and iterate based on that.
Gotcha. That's super interesting. Just like the back and forth, and then just kind of finally hitting that sweet spot, and then getting that white wall
I
covered.
mean, it's funny you say that we finally hit the sweet spot. We're still making changes. I'll give you a very simple example. So there's a button on the ring, right? There's one button, and I've stuck this little piece of silicone on it to make it easier to see. But basically, there's one button on the ring. Now, when you and I, neurotypical users, push a button, what do? You push the button and you release it, right?
Mhm.
That's not necessarily true for neurodivergent users. So when we gave this to users for the first time with intellectual and developmental disabilities, they would push the button and hold it. And they would keep holding it until they saw the light turn on or turn off. And so the ring wouldn't work because you have to let go of the button for something to happen.
Mhm.
And we kept observing this over and over, and we kept giving to users. We're scratching our heads. We're like, why is it, they're getting frustrated. Things are not working. And so why are we even doing this? Forget it. Let's just change it. And so we changed the behavior of the button so that as soon as you depress the button, the signal goes out and you can turn on and off whatever you want. And the funny thing is, we created that version initially only for these users, only for the neurodivergent population. And we liked it so much, like everyone in the team, we started using it around the house. We sort of defaulted our own devices to that. We liked it so much. We now have updated all devices that exist to this new architecture.
Mm.
And so that's another example of like, A, keep iterating, and B, trying to solve for the corner case user makes the problem and solution better for everybody else. So why not do that first? Yeah,
Gotcha.
we'll keep learning.
Yeah. Keep learning. That's a perfect way to put it. I think that's a great way, great just personal mantra, right? Anyone can keep keep learning, right? I think that's a beautiful thing. Um, so I know we're kind of sort of running out of our time. It's getting a little late. So, oftentimes, like during the closing moments of a lot of episodes, I like to ask a lot of my guests, one similar question for all of them. And this is, what, in your opinion, I guess, is the sort of next frontier past the current frontier? Um, Obviously, there's a lot of arguments on what the current frontier is, but some of the main things being technologies like augmented reality and artificial intelligence, computer vision, etc. But these three being some of the main parts of this current frontier. Um, what do you think is, the next big thing or the next frontier? And obviously, this is kind of a wide open-ended question, and we get a lot of like different answers. But just something off the top of your head, in your opinion, what really is that strike or nail in the head that this is the next big thing?
Yeah, it is. It's quite open-ended. This may not be the most accurate answer, but I'll say off the top of my head, the thing that AI seems to be enabling, which is what people like and want, is mass customization. So up until this point, your device looked the same as my device, looked the same as the next person's device. And gradually over time, what seems to be happening is, I want my device to have my personality, and I want your device to have your personality, right? It should have your wallpaper, your photo on it, maybe your engravings on it, whatever, what have you, right? And this is very true in cars, right? Your car will have a different look and feel than my car, even though yours and mine might be the same year, same model, same everything. But you'll have different trinkets in your car, and you might have a different smell of your car, and you might have different things on your dashboard and things like that, right? And that's the one big thing that AI seems to be enabling in a good way, which is mass customization. If every person needs to get a customized product, by traditional technology, that's almost impossible, right? You're trying to scale this to millions of people. How can every single person have their own customized product? The one benefit of AI is everyone gets their own customized whatever they want. because that's essentially the generic model that is able to spit out whatever custom thing you want based on a certain set of common rules or common framework or common LLM or common model. And that, I think, is an interesting. It's not the absolute next asymptote of where everything's going, but I think it's the next milestone that we seem to be already at, kind of, in some ways, which is AI seems to be enabling mass customization more so than any other point in our history, which is certainly for the better. Which is, if you want to learn about physics, you can actually use AI to mostly learn about physics more than anything else. And maybe somebody else wants to learn about chemistry, and somebody else about math, and somebody else about political science, but AI helps you do exactly that
Mhm.
in some ways. Now, we can talk about the negative effects too, but that's in many positive ways. Mass customization, I think, is one interesting next milestone that we seem to be stumbling upon already, which, even maybe 5 or 10 years ago, mass customization was something that everyone wanted, but very difficult to achieve.
Mhm.
Not
Wow.
by traditional methods.
Yeah, that's a great answer, actually. I think that's an answer that I feel like a lot of guests, because obviously I get like a wide array of answers each time since it's so open ended, right? But I think this is like the sort of answer that a lot of guests kind of tease or poke at, or it's like a small detail in a wider web of what they're trying to explain. But I think this is like a great way to kind of summarize that. Obviously, for the viewers at home who've kind of watched the older episodes, they kind of recognize a lot of the smaller details. But I think that's a super interesting and cool answer. So thank
Okay, who knows? That's my vantage point, my 2 cents. Of course, I'm sure if I ruminate on it longer, there's probably a better answer I could come up with. But yeah, off the top of my head, that's what I'm thinking of. But it's an interesting question. I guess I'll have to keep thinking about it.
Feel free to, if you have a different answer later, I'm always open to chat again, right? So, and I think that's also the beautiful thing about this question, because I always leave it at the end and I make sure to just finish off on this and, make it open-ended and kind of just on the spot sort of thing. Because it's super cool hearing different people in different scenarios creating different products and with different goals for those products, and then all kind of giving even broader solutions and thought processes. And I've always been a thorough enjoyer of this very specific question right here, and like listening to all the different answers. And in my head, like over the past 2, 3 years of the podcast, I've been able to create kind of a massive mental web of like all the different answers, and it's really cool. So again, yeah, thank you for that. Of course, I was open ended on the spot, but yeah.
No, I hope it brought value to somebody.
Great. And sadly, we are out of time for today's episode. And for all the viewers watching at home, thank you for tuning in to the first episode of season 3. Obviously, we had a slight rebrand as of recent times, from Adapt to Syntinuum. But it's really just to open up kind of what the podcast is about and a lot of the different technologies and themes we'll be hitting. So thank you again to all the viewers for watching at home. And on a last note, thank you to Mr. Patel for joining us here today.
Again, like I said, honored to be here. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, my email is Dhaval, my first name, DHAVAL at getlotus.com, or just check out the website, getlotus.com.
Yeah, if you want, I can put that in the link down below after description. If you guys want to ask more questions to Mr. Patel, but that's it for today. So thank you again for watching, and I guess I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.